All right, let's call the March meeting, the Virginia Birth-Related Neurological Injury Compensation Program to order. First things first, is now 8:30, 8:33. I can have a roll call. Joel, we'll start with you.
Joel Dillon, present. John Gordon, present.
Tricia Schmidt, present.
David Ratz, present.
Jay Moon, present.
Kathy Slusher, present.
One.
Morning.
All right, having said that, looks like we have a quorum, so is there a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
All right, we have a second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Can we get two names on the record for the minutes?
Yeah.
Jay,
Motion was made by,
Jay Moon.
and seconded by,
Well, one vote was said, so you know.
all right. All right, so moved, the order of the meeting's now called to order. All right, first item on the agenda this morning is the approval minutes. Should have it in the binder there. Hopefully you had it ahead of time to take a look at it. I'll open the floor if there's any discussion as to the minutes from last meeting, or if there are any changes that need to be made that everybody's noticed.
I move to accept.
All right, we got a motion to accept. We're going to have Slusher, second. Joel Dillon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Minutes are approved. All right, the second agenda item you'll see on there is the board meeting transparency and public access policy. You see actually our format's a little different today. We've got families joining us virtually, so they're able to see the board meeting. Obviously they'll just be listening on that portion. Obviously there'll be a segment for public comment in a little bit. But we are, there is, or you should have seen in your board packet, the board meeting transparency and public access policy. At this point in time, I'd like to open that up and see if anybody has comments, or I'll give you a few minutes to at least review it again. And, I'll open the floor for discussion with regards to the policy. Obviously, this is a policy where the board wants to obviously have more transparency to families, want to have more interaction with families. So this public policy is put in place. And we've discussed it past to allow for that virtually. We do have the virtual policy for board meetings, which is already in place and adopted. This is secondary to that. Obviously, we're going virtual attendance by families. So you're going to see several pages there. You have a part-time period. Okay. All right, at this point in time, I'll open the floor to any questions or any comments with regard to the policy and possible changes.
I'll just say I like it as is. I thought it was well done.
I do have, I'll give a little input that things that I kind of picked out of it. On page 2, paragraph 1, it says board members and scheduled presenters who are unable to attend in person may participate virtually as panelists, ensuring full participation in discussions, deliberation in accordance with the board's virtual attendance policy. Virginia Freedom of Information Act for you. I know the policy that we have in place is just for board members, so my suggestion would be to take out and schedule presenters and do that just as a separate sentence. That way, board members who are unable to attend may participate in accordance to that virtual policy, because presenters aren't part of that policy. So
Good
we
point.
just need to do that as a separate
Good
sentence.
point.
Yeah. I've got a few other ones, but anybody else chime in or something. No, I'll just give my input on some of these. Under board determination, Says in such instance, the board retains discretion to determine the appropriate meeting format, including in-person or hybrid meetings consistent with the public meetings law and sound governance practice. I would only insert there, consistent with public meeting, board virtual attendance policy or attendance policy and sound governance practice. So it's governed by all three. My suggestion. Any thoughts on that?
Separate question, David. Under board determination, it says in such instances, the board retains discretion. Is it a board chair decision? Is it something we have to vote on as a board, or who makes that decision and how is it made?
Yeah, it's obviously it's not a script here. I think if I were to read it, again, my view is, but
Yeah.
I think as a board as a whole would be appropriate if we're going to change some kind of meeting format.
Yeah.
But then again, again, if it's just a minor change, do we need a whole convening of the board to do that? That's the
Right,
I'll do
yeah,
it
that was my question. Are we gonna have to meet to determine what kind of meeting we do, or is it something that you can just decide as board chair? Which I think would be more efficient and effective, yeah.
So we can do it with the board via the board chair
Or designee or something like that.
Designate, yeah.
Assuming.
I mean, I'm fine with that either way, but. So, but you're right. I mean, if it's a minor change, I think we go. Any other thoughts on that? Whether we leave it as the board in general, or make it a little more specific as board chair? That way, we're not having to do a meeting and convene and.
How about the board or the board chair, and then that eliminates that need for a meeting? I didn't read it as needing a meeting, but now that I do, it's like, I don't want a meeting to have a meeting, so, yeah. Yeah, I don't want that to even be in question, so I would do the board or the board chair.
All right, so make those two changes and the next one I had was under public registration and access. Public registration may be required for virtual meetings to protect meeting integrity, so on and so forth. I'm just wondering if we need to change that may to will. Public registration will be required for virtual meetings. Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
That's good.
No problem.
Yeah, that's all correct.
All right, let's see, board reserves a right to, I'm sorry, under public comment, although public comment is not required by law, board elects to provide an opportunity for public comment as part of its commitment to openness and engagement. Obviously, the very next sentence, because the board is composed entirely of government appointed members, each public meeting in general will clearly state whether public comment will be received. I don't know if we need to add a sentence just says the board reserves a right to forego public comment if necessary, or something like that, or that somewhat inherent. But
Yeah, it couldn't hurt to be more explicit about it. It couldn't hurt to be more explicit about it. I think that's right.
So just put in a sentence to that effect. Okay. And on the very next page, again, when public comment is offered, speakers may be required to register. My thought was that, do we want to change that to will?
Will.
Require register in advance. And then recognize speakers will generally be provided up to 3 minutes. To me, I think that kind of defeats the purpose if you have the word generally in there. They're either going to be provided 3 minutes from 3 minutes or 4 minutes, right? My thought would take out the word general. I think that just makes it ambiguous. So any other thoughts on that? Or even the time frame, and change it 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes.
I think 3 minutes is generous. In most places, it's 2 minutes, and I think this is being very open to our families and giving them that extra minute, and I'd leave it at 3.
Okay. Yeah, most public bodies I've ever seen is 2 or 3 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's all. We need to address it down the road, certainly. All right. That's all the red ink I had, so.
We will make the changes, so hopefully we can vote on it with accepting of the changes, so we can send you the final copy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, So, and Shelby, can you make those changes or who make some changes there?
Can't you just make a motion to accept the changes and, accept the policy as amended by the approved changes?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. So,
Yeah.
Second, yes.
all right, so we've got motion to
Accept
adopt the
the pol-
resolution with the
Yeah,
amendments and
with amendments and
changes.
changes
All right.
provided.
John Gordon and
And
seconded by Kathy Slusher. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. All right. We shall adopt a resolution for the adoption of the board meeting transparency public access policy. And then I'll get that sign off. Great.
Thanks, Adonica.
Actually, the virtual meeting policy was drafted by the OAG,
Mhm.
compliance with FOIA. This new policy, the credit goes to the new administration of the
Okay.
program. We're trying to take a different direction. I can't take credit for work that hasn't been on.
I would say if Dominica's have done it, there would have been no edits. I'm sure of that. I've never had a lawyer.
So your name beside it, so I just assumed it was you, so, okay.
Which
Thank
isn't
you.
a positive thing most of the times. But, sorry,
No, it's better. I like it.
all right, so I think that closes our discussion on that. The next agenda item is the finance update, and so for that, we have Stephen Weir here. We all know Stephen Weir. We all love Stephen Weir. All right, take it away, Steve.
Where should I sit? Maybe it's next up.
Right here in the middle.
Well,
Yeah.
would I be able to
Take a
see
seat.
the screen?
Yeah, probably.
Let me see the screen.
You know what? Do we pull a chair maybe up? in the middle?
Oh, sure.
I will, I can be.
I'll tell you what, and then that way the mic's here. You want to pull up to the table.
All right. Okay. 360.
Oh, there.
That's all right. Yeah, so really, I'm excited to share a couple things today. We have a budget to share and ask for approval for from this body. We also have a update on our presentation on our financial 2022 to 2024 audit. And our friends from BDO are here and they'll be presenting that. So I'm excited about both those things. The third thing where there isn't a huge update, but I just want to acknowledge is we actually have a second audit that is through the Office of the State Inspector General. And a accounting firm called RSM is managing that audit. We continue to work with them. We continue to pass information back and forth, make requests, we continue to share. We'll have a huge update for this board meeting. I'm hopeful that in May we'll have a further update, but we are continuing to work with them every week. That said, can we pull up the budget document?
I have a question for you about that. Are they looking at financial information, operational information? Do you know what they're doing?
So the Office of the Office of the State Inspector audit, they are it's a performance audit, so it is broader than just financial. And so frankly, with some of the leaders who transition, some of the folks who are working on the audit are no longer with the program, and so we've had to do some figuring out who's doing what thing for that audit going forward. So there is some financial information, but it is not.
A lot of operation.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a performance audit. It's a whole program audit.
Okay.
Okay, so it seems like y'all have the pulling up the
Wait, where's my latest?
You gotta scroll down, not to the left.
Okay. We're already this far along.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, we can zoom in on that. So part of the findings of the like every sort of audit or even investigation that's been going on for over the last few years, then we need a budget. And building a budget for the first time is a challenge. And so what you have in front of you is a transition year budget. It's focused on sort of increasing participant family spending, investing in our operational capacity and modernizing our infrastructure. The budget is not sort of the driver of things. It's the program and what we need to do to stop the sort of families, the driver of things. The budget intends to reflect those decisions. So one sentence that Alan actually wrote was, "This is not simply a spending plan. It's a stabilization and modernization strategy to strengthen service delivery, protect program integrity, and ensure long-term stability." I really felt like that was a good reflection on what the budget is. Okay. So for the process, we have sufficient information to give a high-level budget, and a lot of that, what you're seeing is that. We can see and the program is actually relatively simple from a money out and money in perspective. Our revenue expectations are consistent. Our expenses are grouped into, our appropriate categories. Our cash forecast is really predictable. We did for the first time separate internal costs between program assessments and organizational support. And so that is new. So the program has never seen before. The budget in general is new, but that nuance is new as well. And we did sort of look at historical spend to understand sort of why we were increasing, or what places we were increasing spend and why that was happening. However, we're still lacking in a lot of the infrastructure we need to put together a more detailed budget. We don't have automated system-driven reporting. We don't have a great chart of accounts. We are updating that bit by bit. We don't have a great chart of accounts. We don't have department-level benchmarking from previous years. We don't have full visibility into the assessments that are sent versus the assessments that have been collected. And in 2026 specifically, a lot of our plans are still being formed with our leadership transition with Alan here. A lot of the things we're changing are happening kind of as we speak. And there's also some legislative potential impacts that have not been finalized. Those will impact as well. So with that, if you go to the summary, and this is the last part that I'll speak to, and then I can take questions for the rest of it. But if we go to the budget summary, you can scroll down just a little bit. Thank you. In 2026, we expect to provide 35 to 41 million into families and spend about 6.7 on internal costs. We're expecting about 38 million from assessments, and then if our investment returns are assumed the very safe 5.25 for the no risk return 5.25, we would expect 45.8 million estimated for investment returns, though that is not how we're invested. We are invested in a way that can go up and down. Our program expense is 3.4 million, assessment 550,000, and organizational support 2.8 million. So I've said a bunch of things. I'll pause. I'd love to any questions or discussion or things that you'll want to press them on.
I think the edits that you did to this rate, kind of laid out exactly where we are involved.
We were fortunate to have a budget finance committee meeting where we went over this about 3 or 4 weeks ago. That was open to the public. So I know simple.
Steve, one question. First of all, thank you for all your good work on this. Under this section, however, we are still lacking some key information. And I'm sure you have this internally, but just some timelines for us to expect when we can put some of these items off, whether it's chart of accounts or automated system-driven reporting, et cetera.
Good question. And sorry, I just realized I said something that wasn't quite right. And then the last sentence I said. We went to the what's the meeting we have on Friday afternoons?
The bridge.
The bridge. So we went to the bridge and presented the budget to families. A board member was present. I think Kevin was present. A board member was present. And so that was the public meeting we had. I also informally had conversations with some board members as well, but we didn't have a budget finance committee meeting at Berkeley. I got that confused with the investment meeting. Yeah, to answer your question on when we can expect to have this infrastructure in place, I think it will be we're living with sort of what we call like technical debt from the organization for the last 10 years, and at least, and so we are gradually adding things, and so I'm going to be hesitant to give you an exact date.
Yep.
What I will tell you is we're in deep conversations with a software provider who will, for assessments particularly, we are hoping to install a new assessment software, honestly by the middle of this year. And if we're able to do that, we'll have much more visibility on the assessment side to how many assessments we've sent out, how much has been returned to us, what is still owed, that sort of, this sort of piece of information. On the chart of accounts, that is like, that's a little bit more, when is the moment to kind of hit pause and like rearrange things without breaking other things in the process. And so I would hope that's a second half of the year project, but that feels more like a, that doesn't feel very definite. It feels like that's what it should be.
Steve, you just used the term technical debt. So you just define that for everybody that's listening, just so that's not confused with,
Yeah, that's a good question. And I will top of mind try to define it, but I'm sure there are better definitions out there. But essentially, when our particular program had stayed with a very paper heavy, a very informal and a very a set of knowledge that was inside of the previous set of staff members' heads, and that's how they managed the program. And so there weren't good systems in place. Sort of remember if a doctor had an exemption, for example, or or we had a bunch of paper and we knew all the information was in this file cabinet with all this paper, but we couldn't search for it. And so, and we couldn't search for it. And so that's when I say technical debt, I'm saying we're operating, the program was operating in a very paper heavy, low software capability space, and we are trying to move it forward. But it means things take longer than they should, than people expect in a modern organization. Is that your question? Does anybody else want to give that?
That's a good way to, yeah, basically you're digging out of a hole. You have an operational hole, the way you operated that now that you're trying to modernize, you can't turn a switch. You actually have to work to do your work.
right. But I was thinking over it, listen, I wanted to make sure that was clear. It was not a monetary debt when you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm talking to the
That's not.
I just want to make
market, but we do not owe any
That's
software.
right.
I want to mention something else that's very important regarding the assessment. Right now, Adonica will let us know whether someone's going to get the program. We have to have the documentation. We actually go through piles and piles of paper looking for a piece of paper. And that's just not acceptable. But it's not just important to us and the family. It's also important to the doctors, hospitals, because if we don't have it, a person may not be able to get the program, and that would open up to litigation, which is probably in nobody's best interest in the world. Okay. So this is a priority. And we actually hired a part-time procurement officer to make sure we do these correct. They are very technical when you do procurements.
All right, any other questions or comments?
We are asking for approval of this budget. We do expect that it will, all budgets are wrong, some are useful. So we do expect that we're not going to hit these numbers exactly, but we are going to be able to track to this. And then, there is a range, especially for family spending, that we're asking for approval for. If we are meaningfully off, we would of course come back to this body or go to the finance budget committee and have some conversations about that.
Well, I have a couple questions, and this is just both for Stephen and for maybe Alan. In taking into account some of the upcoming expenditures, was there anything in particular that you tied in with potential statute changes that affected your outlook budget?
I would say the first thing is if the statute passes us now, I think we get a lot more money in because you can actually get in the program in, let's say the hospital signed up for pay their money, but the doctor didn't. It appears to me that they can get into the program instantly doctor. So no one, there's not going to be a free meal for anybody. They have to pay if they want to get in, if they don't want to sue. That's the way I read that. The other thing is, I think there's some expanded services. They don't really concern me as much because they seem to be the right decisions made. For example, the $175,000 cap is going to go to reasonable and medically necessary for housing modifications. I anticipate that will be an increase. In the vans, even though the 75 was not a legitimate number to be using, it's going to be reasonable and medically necessary. So we've kind of already aligned with that already now. And I don't think we know all the impacts of everything else yet. We want to wait till the governor signs it, and basically talk about it, assess it, get with our legal staff and try to figure it out. So Steve may have some thoughts on it. I do think, when we get systems in place, we'll be able to make such good decisions. And, you know, we've looked at the Florida model and we looked at the data they can present. That's like, God, I wish we had that. That would make such a difference. And I think the families will really be happy with that, because we can actually look at what we're spending money on. And then we might be able to maybe even add some benefits, or, you know, figure that out in a way to ensure that the fund stays healthy. But we're not accumulating money that we could actually be helping families.
Right. There are two, the death benefit, which I think most of you have seen now, potential for raising that death benefit now. Number one, which is substantial. And then number two, on the IT side, building out the electronic system, which would be a burden on the program. So, which was estimated to be what, 1.2, 1.5 million. So, I mean, has that been taken into account at all?
We do have a placeholder for the IT build out. It's not that high, but it is in there. And then the range, if you look at when you say we expect to spend 35 to 41 million, or expect to provide 35 to 41 million families, that range is between a 10% increase and a 30% increase. So that is definitely budget that we expect to spend more on families, or provide more to families in 2026.
I would like to make one other comment. You know, we're trying to really be trauma informed in this whole process, including the language we use. And I know a lot of the language on the papers and stuff says things that aren't trauma informed. And we're going to get rid of words like death benefit to bereavement services or something else. But we're going to have to go through everything, because this really does impact families, the words we use. And I just every time I hear or claim it, death benefit, my staff have heard me say every time we see, I don't even like our email where we say our name at birthinjury.com. The families have to see that every time they get an email from us. I mean, that could be triggering, that could, so there's gonna be a lot of changes that don't deal with money, but I think will be a good impact on how we look at it.
And then the one thing I wanted to ask, maybe for a little explanation, because you have an appendix 1 on this. I know this is something you brought up at the previous meeting. It's changed a little bit. So maybe you can just change a little bit.
Yeah,
The chart.
let's go down to, there's a little slide needs to do a word. There, one more. There we go. Yeah, okay, so there's a few different things going on here. So the top line, so just the metric we're looking at here is percentage of spend, total organizational spend that is internal, right? So spending for accounting services and spending for executive directors and staff, compared with the total spend for the program, which includes those funds provided to parents. And so if it's at 10%, for example, that means we spend 10 cents internally for every 90 cents we provide to families. And it's a very normal question for organizations like ours to see what should that ratio be. It shouldn't be 50%, where we spend 50 cents for every 50 cents we provide to families. It also, one of the traps that people fall on, and I guess the slide is really making the argument that in previous years, this organization fell on the job of making it too small, and therefore, didn't upgrade the technology in the way they needed to do. It didn't upgrade the process in the way they needed to do, which caused some real challenges in the last few years. And so the top line there is if we include all non-participant expenses. So it's every single portion of the internal expenses. The bottom line is actually us saying, like, no, some of the internal expenses are very program related. Like somebody who's is sort of a case manager or something that is where they're actually working very directly with the program, or they're assessment related, we should spend the money on assessments to make sure those work correctly. And so that bottom line is actually saying, what if we were only talking about organizational support expenses, and that's like the HR, the admin, the base, the things that like are not very directly related to program outcomes. So those are two different views. I feel like the bottom view is probably more accurate, but the top view, it felt like a little, if I didn't include the top view, I felt like I would be not showing the whole picture, and so I wanted to make sure I showed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and obviously there's been a little bit of jumps between gaps 2024 to 2026, but it looks like it's been flat for 2025. I know you spoke to that previously.
It did flatline. I mean, my sort of, even with how I've structured the slide of having the median for similar organizations be that dotted line. I think in the end, this organization, the way the program is set up, it should be below that dotted line. But I think this year, maybe next year, we should be more open to having it higher while we sort of catch up from that lack of technology. I'll refrain from using the lack of technology. As we catch up to that, I do think it's going to be expensive, and I think we're paying for things now that we should have paid for, from 2015 to 2020.
And I think it'll make it cheaper later once we get the systems in place.
It should make it cheaper. I hesitate to say that it's like, this is expensive stuff. Like, and we want a high quality program that serves our families really well. And that's not, that you can't do that for cheap. Like, it takes some money, but yeah, I think the number will eventually.
And I think there's some expenses we cannot touch, and that's before they get in the program. Adonica in the AG's office is a lot of litigation. That gets expensive. We don't really get involved. She'll ask me questions, but really, there's an expense involved with that litigation. That we will not be able to touch because our attorney general has to be able to fight battles to make sure people get in that should get in. People don't get in that aren't allowed to.
That's right. There are a lot of expenses in this program that are not discretionary. And so we'll have to do those.
One quick comment on that. Most of the legal expenses are for the claimant's attorney.
Yes.
Stephen, one question on, and again, really good work on building this out, and I know it's especially first time around, we know that there's probably gonna be some changes we need to make. Some areas are very easy to predict, like rent for the offices, we've got a lease and we know what that's gonna cost. Other areas are a lot harder to predict. Where is, guesswork is not the right term, but where in the budget do you feel like you've had to use the most? Or where is there potential volatility? Investment returns, obviously, and medical services for the families, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so investment returns is very much we just applied 5.25%, and it's been higher than that the last few years. And if I knew how to do that, I'd be in a different business. Can you scroll up to the table? Yeah, family. Okay, sorry, there goes that table there. Yeah. So if you take a look at this, a lot of this is relatively predictable. There is always some trade-off between, contractors and staff. So some of that, you see a line for staff salaries, you see a line for something and other promotional services, and that's part of that's just the management like what makes the most sense for it. So I don't expect those together to be that different, but I think they could change some. Legal expenses, to the point that was just made, some of those are not discretionary. We don't get if we pay for the legal services on behalf of the families, and that is just we don't get to choose that, and so that is not very easy to predict, nor do we need to. The program digitization project and program management platform, you can see both those have 250,000 in there. That is very much just a plug-in number. We're not quite sure how much those things are going to pay. Yeah, so I feel, I mean, on a scale of, I'm kind of freelancing here, but on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd put it at probably like a 6 or a 7. Like, I feel reasonably good about this. I feel like we have the right category. There's no new category of expense that's gonna jump onto us that is gonna cost us a ton of money. But also if there's a curveball that comes, I say a lot, if there's a curveball that comes to legislation, we don't have a choice but to fill on that and we'll make some adjustments. But I'd put it, I think as an accountant, I'd love everything to be a 10 out of 10, and I would call this 10 out of 10. I'd call this a 6 out of 10. So yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
The other vision moving forward, and I want to see if you agree, just because I'm the optimist that likes to end on a high note, and that is with the visibility, the increased technology, I see this number being better, but for several reasons. One, I think the assessments will be better. The other thing is, I think the visibility will be better, and therefore, I think the participant attorney fees should drastically decrease because it's more visible and obvious, and at the same time, if there's extra funding to be able to meet family needs at a greater level, that should also decrease dissatisfaction. So my big vision of how this number is going to come down is everybody ending up happier and the participants having more money to work with their children.
I think that's absolutely right.
You make a great point on the, our policies for including families in the process. We believe our policies will cause us people, basically, we're trusting them, we think they will trust us. That means when there's a disagreement, they will come to us because they trust us. And that's kind of like the big picture.
Exactly.
And, those people in the attorneys, because they disagree with it, that's fine. That we're not gonna have a problem with that. We're gonna treat us through the process and not be negative about it. But we do believe in trying to get the trust of families so they will trust us.
All right, any other questions about the proposed budget?
So we are looking for a vote for this body. You guys are.
All right, if there's no further discussion or questions, I'll look for a motion to approve the 2026 budget.
I'm going to motion to approve the FY 26 budget as presented.
Don Gamble, second. Okay, moving on. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right, ayes have it. And I think the program for the milestone of having a budget. That's all, yeah.
I'm serious.
I
I can check that off.
You get on the hustle if you want.
Well, I'm gonna call it.
Yes.
So next up on our agenda from a finance perspective is an audit, review. I will say we are very, I'll let it on like that kind of, I'm not going to. So I'll let Sean kind of give you, the details of it. But I am very excited for where we are. So, Sean?
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
There is a presentation that we have.
And I don't think that's included.
All right, well, I will take you through this. Some of the information is repetitive to what we covered in January, so I'm not going to go over that. I'll just refer you to it. You will have this information, I'm assuming, subsequently. So if there are any follow-up questions, of course, you can always feel free to reach out. Thank you. So if you will advance to, I believe, page 4 of this deck.
So you're gonna scroll down. Yeah.
Oh, you're going over to lunch now.
This slide is included here with your reference. Again, I'm assuming you will be provided with material subsequent. It's just a high level overview of the required communications that are covered previously. Kind of a cheat sheet, if you will, to say there was something that we needed to report on versus there was not. And then where to find it was something that we have to learn. If you go to the next page. With regards to overview and status, I am pleased that today we are presenting all 3 years. When we were here in January, we had the 2022 report substantially completed. 23-24, we're still in progress with respect to completing some of the information that was needed for one of the required supplementary schedules. That information is now complete, as well as some other adjustments, which I will cover through this. But for all 3 years, we do expect to issue an unmodified opinion with respect to any items that are still pending. We're still waiting for the final legal letter, as well as management signed representation letter. Once we have those items, and assuming that there are no significant changes that were not already communicated to us through those items, we expect to issue altered reports, of course, with your approval. Right, we go to we can skip this page. Nothing of note here. Nothing has changed with respect to the significant risks that we covered for all of the audits, and this information is the same from January. Same with respect to areas of focus, there have been no substantive changes here as well. With respect to misstatements, we put this information to the presentation to make it a little bit easier to go over with you all. So as we're going through this process, of course, it is normal in the course of an audit that we would have some adjustments. Some of them are going to be reported. Some of them management has elected to pass on. What's shown here are with respect to the 2022 fiscal year, the adjustments that actually were reflected in the financial statements. The new one that you would not have seen previously from the January materials is item number 4 with respect to the claims reserve expense. In our additional work, in order to substantiate the information that should be in that required supplementary schedule, and that schedule is the claims development schedule, that's included at the back of the financial statement. So not a core part of the financial statements, but it is required to be there by both GASB and the Virginia Code. In looking at the information, talking with the actuary, with the Commonwealth, as well as the third-party actuary Pinnacle that works with the program, we determined that one, management had not been provided with all the actuary reports that existed. There was an additional report. We went through that all together. Some of the information we found from then the subsequent conversations said, okay, there actually are some updates that should have been made to the liability that's reflected on the balance sheet or that statement of net position. That had not been made in those prior years. So you will see this adjustment both in 22, 23, and in 24 to get it caught up to where the actuary is saying they're projecting the liability should sit. So the adjustments here is, you'll see this it increased by about 68.7 million over what was reported previously. That is a big number. But they're looking at what the liability should be for the life of the program. And that's not just those families who have been admitted today. That is also including an estimate for any future families, looking at the rate at which there tends to be admittance from year to year projected out into the future. If you will scroll down.
Let's go back to that one.
Yes.
So 68 is prospectively of families may be coming in.
For the long term.
For the long
portion,
term.
yes.
But then the 24 is just the IBNR so no one even gave that information. That should be booked every year.
Yeah,
Yeah, so, okay, and that's just getting us back to where it is at that point in time.
at that point in time, correct.
Okay. All right.
Ultimately, there were reports for each time.
Yeah, because I know, yeah.
So yes, 22 was booked to that most recent at that time, same for 23, same for 24.
With this, if you all talked about that process to make sure that you all account for this going forward.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
And happily, this information comes very cleanly
Yeah,
to us in
you
an
get it.
actuarial report. Yeah, we get it every other year. We get this information.
Okay.
It just hadn't been entered.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
With respect to any of the uncorrected misstatements, there should be no changes here compared to what we presented in January. These are the adjustments that we noted and that were above the threshold to which we had to propose an adjustment. But we're not required to make them, they're below the dollar amount where we're saying, hey, this now has to be booked in order to make sure the financial statements are accurate. So management has elected to pass on these. Same here for 23, so this would not have been included in the January information. So with respect to these adjustments, most of them were pretty minor, as you can see. There are 2, number 3, and number 4 that are a little bit larger. That number 3 entry is just to make sure that the loss related to the fraud was correctly reflected within the financial statements. So just making sure, and you'll see once you review the financial statements, there's a separate section to just make it obvious to everyone that this is not our normal operating expenses. It's just shown below the line there. So that adjustment pertains to that. Number 4, again, this is adjusting to the actual report that related to the 2023 information. That last adjustment down at the bottom, that one's really just a reclass. So it had no real financial statement impact. It was just moving it from one GL account to another where it really belongs. So 0 impact to the bottom line. With respect to uncorrected misstatements, This is just related to some difference in valuation. That again, management just, elected because of timing and everything else, the time it would take to kind of update everything to pass on it for the current. And then that other adjustment related to deferred revenue, it was slightly overstated. We found in our testing that there was just some instances where revenue actually should have been earned and released out of that balance. Cash had already gone out, so that's just an adjustment there.
So on the investments, is that just level 3 stuff?
Yeah, those would be alternatives.
Okay.
Scrolling. 2024 corrective misstatements, very similar themes here. Again, the larger entries again tend to be the ones related to just making sure the financial statement and that fraud related to that was appropriately reflected within the statements. That number is changing from year to year just because we're making all of these adjustments at once. Normally, if we're in a situation where you're auditing just the 1 year and you're going and auditing just the next year, the adjustment would just reflect the difference. Because we are making these top side in all 3 years, this is the reason why that number seems to keep increasing, because we're just pushing it down from the top side level to all 3 financial statements all at the same time. And then with respect to some of the other items on here, only other notable one, I would say, most of these are, again, they're just reclasses between GL accounts to just make sure that certain type of payments were captured in the right line. So for instance, adjustment number 4, so that is dollars that were received in advance. There's a breakout between what is mandated insurance payments versus what the insurance companies are paying otherwise. So we're just flipping that to make sure it was appropriately captured, so it lines up with the assessments.
So number 5, so there with $1 million was paid for trust home and they expensed it, it should have been capitalized?
No, so
Or
number
should have been
5,
capital we own it, or,
that is one of the small group of homes that the program owns.
okay,
That home was actually sold
oh,
during the year, so that is to appropriately reflect the gain on the sale.
okay, so that's the game, okay.
Yeah, I believe there were 2 homes that were sold during the year. And they both had gains related to them, so we reported those adjustments.
Nice adjustment.
So, well, with regards to the fraud, we had an insurance policy that we were able to get some reimbursement back from that. Will that be in 25?
That is actually reflected in your 2024 statements. So there's a receivable that will be reflected related to the $1 million
Right.
that the insurance company is expected to. But since that cash had not come in as of 12/31/2024, in 2025, you'll see the other side of it. The cash will be collected, that receivable will go away.
Okay,
Funds have arrived, they're sitting in our bank account, but
And-
they're arriving when.
okay, that's what I thought. And then we're supposedly recouping a small amount. Is
There-
that coming in? Is that happening?
So there is the 100,000 that was also received in subsequent to 2024. I believe that also happened in 2025. That's also a part of the receivable that is in the financial statements. And there is a judgment for additional dollars.
Correct.
At the moment, management has elected to not record the full amount of that receivable only because the chance of full recoverability is low, because as I understand it, it is owed by Mr. Raines.
Correct.
So what will happen is as he pays any additional funds in the future, should those funds be received, then it would be reported as a gain once received, just because the chances, I think the concern was to put the full amount of the receivable on the books, and it goes years and maybe there's minimum to no payment that's received against it, then is that a true representation of the assets?
But even if you put it on the books, when you have to like evaluate it and determine if it's impaired. So it's not worth putting on, I would not put it on the books.
Okay.
You can
I have
disclose
a
it.
question, but I don't know how to formulate it, so I'll think about it and then I'll ask.
So, but it's disclosed though, it's in the notes.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
do we do anything about trying to capture that and not just let it sit and not be addressed? Is there a process for that? And that may not be your question.
That is more operational question.
There is a process. We'll think about it. You can answer yes.
Is the entity that would normally collect on the restitution
Okay.
order, but as was discussed a minute ago, it's gonna be really hard for them to collect it from Mr. Raines.
Okay.
And part of the reason was the list of things that he listed in his sentencing decree when he was sentenced to prison, where he alleged he spent the money, and a lot of it was listed as gambling.
Right.
So a lot of that is just gonna be really hard to collect.
Vaporized.
Well, I do have an update. I was told by the U.S. Attorney that there was a private sale of those infamous golf clubs. Purchased the proceeds, and the program should be receiving $33,000 at some point in the next 60 days or so.
Okay. That's good.
Okay. So then, yes, then the, 2025 financial statements would reflect an additional receivable related to that 33 that is reflected in 26. So as that incrementally happens, that'll essentially be the approach once the dollar amount can be determinable.
Okay.
We also have a lien on his house, which is worth a substantial amount, but I believe the spouse is living there. And the U.S. Attorney said it would, a foreclosure action would likely not be successful, so unfortunately, we have to wait until they try to sell the house.
So eventually they'll sell it and we'll get the money. That's kind of like that works.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, if we continue on, these are the remaining corrected adjustments for 2024. Again, you see that claims reserve adjustment, and that finally catches it up to the most recent actuarial report that's available.
And so you're booking this for 22, 23, 24. It's good, 'cause
There was a different projected amount in terms of when the liability would run to for each year.
It looks like 24 went down quite a bit.
Well, it went down in terms of the just additional adjustment.
Adjustment, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And that last adjustment is just related to, there were some pending trades in your investment accounts right at the end of 12/31/2024. So we're just moving it, they were reflecting it within investments as a negative cash when we got the statement. So we're like, what's that negative cash? We know that you were against the margin account. So we just moved it to a payable. And that is it for the corrected, uncorrected. Again, these are related to just the confirmation and the alternative investments.
That's it on the adjustments.
That's it on adjustments. There was
Job,
nothing else
Stephen.
that we had to know.
Good job, man. I thought, I expected much worse. Seriously.
Thank you. Not working.
Yeah.
With internal control, so we covered in depth in January, the types of findings that we laid out. Those repeat in all 3 years, just because the control environment was, for all intents and purposes, the same, in all 3 years. Some change in 2024, once there was a change in management, Mr. Raines was no longer there, but in terms of really any systemic change, that had not occurred yet at that point. So really, those comments are really the same across all of the years. Management's response is the same as well. So did not repeat that information here again, since you've seen it previously. But we continue on, please. The only thing of note here, that we pointed out previously is that the program adopted GASB 87 respect to leases. That's reflected as an adoption in the 12/31/2022 financial statements. And then that language doesn't carry forward in 23/24 because now it's in place. So now it just is the law of the land. Other than that, there were no other real significant changes. If any of you called out, in the financial statements in the footnote, other than, again, that disclosure, just identifying the unusual loss and how that flows through the statement of revenue, expenses, et cetera. With respect to other required communications, I am not gonna go through these again in depth, because I know we read through them in January. And again, there's no other real changes. Only thing again to point out, scope of our procedures were expanded for 2022 and 2023 because of the additional wraparound fraud procedures that we had to perform related to the management investigation that took place. Other than that, I think you are pretty well informed, because as we know it, you know it. Anything else that has transpired that we have been required to communicate? Scroll down. Again, the only other things that we are pending at this point would be the legal letter that covers all 3 years, as well as management's representation letters. So once we have that, and once we have you're okay to issue, then we expect to issue the report. Continue, please. There's been nothing, I always have to say this out loud, that we are aware of that bears on our independence, or that has caused us to be impaired from the independence standpoint, and that would then prevent us from being able to issue financial statements. And then just an overview. So here, just want to call out what that area now looks like since we made it its own section. So using the 2022 financial statements as an example, which are the financial statements you saw previously, before the operating loss was included, or that unusual loss was included as a component of not operating, we decided to move it. There's a new GASB statement, GASB 103, that is not yet effective. You're not required to adopt it yet, but that has a host of changes with respect to how certain information is disclosed. It's the best information that is out there because current GASB didn't really address what you do with an item like that. You really had a lot of variability. So we just decided to, borrow back a little bit, since that is the best available information. And we made it its own section, which is what GASB 103 will mandate going forward anyways. So you will see that presentation in all 3 years. Again, these are the tables related to the lease adoption. This is in the 2022 financial statements, and then on a go-forward basis, you will just see where the standard lease disclosure has the lease horizon and all those other required elements of information within the footnotes. And then for the changes in the claims liability reserve, the biggest change that has happened since the last presentation. So total estimated claims liability after the adjustments is reflected on the left side of the screen. So 2021 from a was 619.8 million. The adjustments in 2022 increased that to 712.2 million, and so on and so forth, where we get to 12/31/2024 and it is at 830.3 million. On the right side of the screen, we just break out how much of that is the IBNR that has been actuarially determined, and how much of that is actually based on estimated claims, both present and future. And then in terms of some explanation to why there is these changes year after year, because you notice the delta from year to year is pretty large. When we talked to the actuary, and of course we pulled our internal actuary into this discussion as well to make sure they agreed with the methodology that was being used. They said really there's a lot of sensitivity both to the inflation rates and interest rates, and both of those have been volatile since 2020 really. And that is why you're seeing how that then impacts their determination of what the claims liability should be. Right. I will pause there. That is really the presentation. Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
On see the project.
David,
If I can,
I just wanted to say in your packets, you should have a menu. You can just write your name on that, circle your sandwich, and we'll get that sent.
That'd be a second, let's do that.
and well, I do have a process related question and comment. So we have the audit financials reviewed. We need the board to accept those audited financials. I don't think the last time a set of audited financials was accepted was in the, I think, summer 2024. And it was the 2020 and 2021 audits. And so the process is not, is something that I would want the board to sort of weigh on how you want to approve those. One idea would be to, and because they are largely done, but there are a few T's to cross and I's to dot before we have the actual auditing. And so one idea would be to have, and forgive me for not knowing all that we're going to go on, but to have this group maybe delegate to somebody the ability to approve, and then we can have that approved in the next week or so, or something like that. But we do need.
Just approve it, because all you're waiting on is a legal letter and rep letter, nothing changes.
Yeah, it is
It's
substantially
done.
done. That's correct.
From our perspective, it's done. You just need a legal letter from lawyers. And management needs to sign a rep letter because they won't give it to you without.
Right, and Alan's prepared to sign the rep letter, so yeah, so another way could, Alan's got a pen. So another way to do it would be to approve it now, that is correct.
I mean, that's what I'm used to, just
Great.
everything else is formality. Those things have to happen, but unless the legal letter is gonna say something that's gonna change it, I don't think it's real.
So maybe approve contingent on no changes, which we don't think that there will be any. So I'd like to submit that to the board to potentially.
Yeah, I'll put that out there, give a motion to approve it.
I move motion to approve the 3 years, 22, 23, 24 audited financial statements, subject to receiving the legal letter and the representation letter from management.
Second.
So we have a second. Bill, Dylan, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Listen, hey. Ayes have it.
Approved. I've never seen Steve Carlson.
You'd say it
Well, I was gonna say, a reason to have another meeting is to approve something that's not gonna change. Yeah, I'm serious. It's just gonna stay out.
All right, I'm glad you got that. Everybody get their lunch orders in the computer. Okay, so the next item on the agenda, executive director reports. So obviously we've all met Alan, virtually. This is the first meeting Alan's here, so welcome aboard. Glad to have you already. Been already a lot of changes as the board has seen. A lot of positive minutes from staff, family members as well. So thank you, Alan, on board. So really just wanted to give Alan the floor here to give us, first of all, just an assessment. He's been, how long have you been here now? That's a month and a half. Yeah. Just give us your current assessment of what we've seen as you go into the program, staff structure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the members of the board. I want to begin by thanking you for the support you provided when you came into this role. I really appreciate you answering the call whenever I call you and ask questions. Next to my wife, I probably call David more than anybody. I get on the call almost every day, and I appreciate, he's been a big help. Yeah, it's been enjoyable. One thing was very clear during the interview process when I came here was the board's expectation that the program evolve in a way that's truly family centered. And I appreciated that. And I wasn't looking for a place to go, to be honest. I had a business I was doing fine, mentoring CEOs, things like that, enjoying it. But I really believe in this program. It's a great program. It's great for families. It's great for doctors. It's great for everybody. So I was excited to be part of it and try to make a difference in here with you guys. Before we begin, I also want to recognize that March is Developmental Disability Awareness Month. A reminder that our work is ultimately about supporting families with dignity, transparency, and trauma-informed care. And I just want to make a mention is yesterday we had staff have a presentation by an expert in trauma-informed care. We videotaped it. It was very impactful, and it's going to be the first video on our YouTube channel where we're going to have things that can educate families like guardianships and things that families are going to be interested in. So first, I'd like to talk about the current program assessment, and I'm not going to talk a lot about these things because I can answer questions and want to make sure that not that I get everything out, but you get all your answers that you want. On my first day, I attended the program's family orientation as a parent would entering the program. to see the process from the viewpoint of a parent. I thought that was most important. I think Shelby and I kept saying, my first day's gotta be from a parent's perspective. And it was very educational. I learned a lot right there, and it kind of informed me about where I wanted to head, because the case managers who I met with, their philosophy was, they were very much wanted to help families and stuff, and it seemed like there was this idea that we were more like insurance company type thing. And the staff did not appreciate it. They actually want to engage families. I was surprised that our staff wouldn't go out and see the family if they happened to be in town on orientation, maybe face to face. When I said you can do that, they were shocked. They were so excited. They really want to know these families. They really care about these families. After that, I spent my first week meeting individuals, every staff member for about 30 to 45 minutes, just getting a deep understanding of the culture. And it was very educational, but I did learn that the staff care very deeply about the families we serving, and we're excited about engaging the families more. To the T, everybody was exciting. Because of that, I would want to be very deliberate in making changes. I didn't want to just start making changes. I didn't feel I needed to. I felt I was part of a team that had my similar views on being family-centered and trauma-informed. Talking about the staffing structure, and coming from Florida, I was very familiar with the Florida program, and I had thoughts about things that they did great, and I came here and we do things a little different. And I came out thinking one way, but after I was around the program, there's some things I like better about the Virginia program. There's some things I like better about the Florida program. And I thought that was really good. I actually sent an email to their CEO saying, I'd like to get together again, because I was talking about the differences. And, I think they probably want to change some things to be like us. We check these things to be like them. For instance, our case management is separate from our, forget the word, the billing, people that, what? Claims. I always forget that word. Claims. They actually combine it. In their case managers are nurses. And I kind of like the idea of not having nurses. We have a nurse, a great, an amazing nurse who runs that shop. But I like the idea of having people that are more social working. We don't need nurses. Parents have nurses and doctors and stuff. We can read the reports. So I really like the way they were doing that. But we did automatically, pretty soon, expand our case management so we can interact with families more, and not just be about them coming to us when they had needs, but also us being able to go to them to ensure that their needs were being met. Because there's some families that aren't really engaging with us. They take what we give them, and they may be entitled to more things that can help their family even more. So I think that case management is a big thing, and I appreciate staff advocated for that to me, and we hired 2 MSWs, and one of them is and that has some expertise in trauma-informed care. That's going to make a big difference as we work with families. I think strengthening case management is going to be a huge issue coming up. And so I think that that's going to be a continued priority. Looking ahead, we will be working toward an integrated system for managing program information. In fact, you're going to hear later about an initiative through John about paperless. And believe it or not, we had files back in 1987. And I think people forget we're like a state agency when it comes to everything except money. We don't get any state money, but everything else, everything. Luckily, I learned my lessons from our Attorney General's office. They've been very informative of me, things that I got caught off guard because I didn't think they would apply to us. But I'm glad that I have been educated on that, because it allows me to make better decisions. But that integrated system showed up in the budget, but that's going to be very important. It's going to be an expense this year, and it's going to pay off big time. The biggest challenge with the fraud and stuff, I think a lot of the stuff was taken care of by going to bill.com, so everything's in the system. Stephen's got me looking at bank records, making sure nothing's in there about gambling, I guess. I guess that's what If we see Las Vegas, we red flag it.
Really understatement.
Yes, and no wire transfers and second party reviews and I think Bill.com is a huge thing, but a big part of this is going paperless, you know, with scanning things instead of having paper everywhere. And we have a big process going on, but that's going to make a big difference because with AI now you can scan documents, PDFs and stuff. So it's going to be a process, but you'll hear about that later because it's so important. I'll put it on the agenda. Overall, I'm very pleased with the staff currently serving the program and the commitment they bring to the program. I love going into work and seeing them. I mean, they're passionate about it. I get dragged into different conversations walking around because they know I love to hear about stuff. And, you know, I think that it's going to take a while. The biggest challenge has been the legacy challenges, things that happened in the past that we kind of figure out how to solve. You know, some of them I can't figure out, but we want to resolve them. Give you an instance. We have a situation, and I hope families are listening because we're going to solve it, where we are paying a third-party vendor that's no longer with us. And they were supposed to pay the families, and the families never got paid what we thought they had. So they're getting notices that they're delinquent. We got to fix that. And so it's just a minor thing, but it's huge for these families that they're being shown that they paid something out, but they didn't get reimbursed. And we think we got reimbursed because we paid the person that was supposed to pay them. Stuff like that. There's a lot of legacy issues we got to fix. I don't know if we can fix them all, but we're going to do our best because some of these issues are so unfair that I can understand why the families are frustrated and have challenges getting over it. And, you know, one other thing is we created this, we basically jumped on the board's decision to do a parent advisory committee. That is huge. We've got a great group. Now we have a place where whenever we are making decisions, we can send it there before we make decisions or have them part of the process, even in draft mode, or even them giving us ideas that we will look at. That's very important. I appreciate you guys that thought of that. That's critical. They need to be involved in every part of our process, the families. As I always say, families are the experts on their own needs. We aren't expert on their needs. They are the experts on their needs. And the best systems listen carefully to the people they serve. Ultimately, the program board are going to be responsible for the decisions. We understand that, but that doesn't mean we can't listen to them and try to meet their needs and listen and get educated when they talk to us about policies we're thinking about developing. Their feedback has actually already helped in a big way. We had our first meeting and a couple individuals were saying, we like this family-centered approach, and some of you board members have heard it. And some people were asking, well, how do we know the next guy or the next gal ain't gonna get rid of that and go back to another system? And me and David had a conversation. We talked about changing the job description to ensure family-centered, trauma-informed is prominent in the job description. And I think you guys are taking that on later. But institutionalizing this idea that we're going to meet the families where they are is critical to having success with this program. Next, I want to talk about the bridge update. The bridge was kind of spontaneous because we kept talking about having a bridge between us and families. This is a call that has been every 2 weeks with any family member that wants to get on. And it's been great from our perspective because we hear the questions that are out. And one question that kept coming up initially was this tax issue about 1099s. We were issuing 1099s. We looked into it. We should have not have been doing 1099s. We had fixed it. We went back and amended fast returns. We've done the whole thing. I don't know if we'd have gotten there so quick if we didn't have the families together talking about that. You know, we had a great tax expert help us and actually saved a lot of money because they did it pro bono. You know, it would have cost us $40,000 to get a formal opinion. So I think that that's the type of things that we can do really good. But that bridge update, we leave the bridge update with lots of questions. It allows us to go back and formally answer them and then get back to them. The next week, the next meeting we'll talk about. And it's very important. We also brief them on the legislation that's going on. After a session, I'm hoping the Attorney General's office can maybe do a training on what passed in the law so the families can know it. I know that a lot of them are behind advocating for different things. I think them knowing the perspective of the program would be very good also. And one thing I really like is that in each of the bridge meetings where we have all the families, we've got a board member at each one of them. Now, we know we can only have one because of FOIA stuff, but it's been great to have a board member. I think the family appreciates and knows that you guys are interested in what they're saying every day and not just a meeting where they might get 3 minutes. And I'm hoping that continued education with individual board members will actually be helpful too in the office. Program initiatives. I was going to go to the program initiatives unless people have questions about what we're doing internally. I have been purposely going slow because I like who we have and what they're doing, and we're kind of moving in slow motion on that because I think we'll get where we need to be in the end. Probably next board meeting we'll have more information about that. But I haven't been lurching one way or the other because I know when you do that, you end up second guessing yourself, trying to move very slowly on how we do. We did not hire. We had it was kind of like a deputy position thing. We've eliminated that position completely. I don't think this program needs a deputy. And we eliminated another position that wasn't being as useful. But I think we're in pretty good shape with where we're headed there. I would like to talk now about program initiatives. And we have Shelby Ogner. I was gonna say, before we get into that, maybe just back up, because you touched on a couple different things here. I just wanted to open that up to the floor. Any board had any questions about, obviously, Director Allen's assessment or the structure. I know there's a current organizational reminder of the current structure, or as far as the parent advisory committee. I know there's been some discussion as far as the label now. Yeah. So maybe. Yeah. We call it an advisory committee, and I was concerned about that because we don't want the families to be stuck with FOIA and not being able to move. The families love interacting on Facebook amongst themselves. That's a good thing. And I want to not cross that line where all of a sudden 2 family members can't meet, that they're not doing things that would push them into the FOIA ring. And so we're making sure that we're handling it so it doesn't become FOIA. But we might want to change the name because the name sounds like FOIA committee. If you see that committee and you do nothing, you go, I hope they're publicly noticing every time they meet and stuff. So that's something we're doing, and we'll work with the group on that.
I did have, but I think this is excellent. Thank you very much. That was fabulous. The one question I had that I think offers me a little clarity was when you said that, like 3 to 4 months ago, we thought things were clean because we had made the payments, and now we're finding that the payments never made it to the participant. How much of that, is it a couple of families? Is it how many people were affected by that?
I think it's just a few, and the family and the staff had done the right thing sending it out, but we're not getting the information, so we can pay it. But we're going to get more aggressive than that. We were just talking yesterday. We got to get to this. We need to make sure we take care of this. It's not fair. It's not their responsibility when we already paid someone. We got to do that and go after those people.
Right.
We don't need them in the middle going after some third party.
Correct.
But philosophically, we're on board with these families. We're trying to meet with them. If someone calls me, I'll meet with them. We'll set up a staffing at the office. But I think that is an important thing. I don't think it's that many families.
But I think it might explain, and it might explain some of the discrepancy that we felt a few months ago at a meeting where we thought we were good and they weren't feeling good. So that's helpful to me to put the puzzle pieces together, and I'm glad it's being addressed aggressively.
I'm assuming that's the third party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We thought we legitimately thought it was paid, and he didn't pay that, and then they left, and it's like, what do you do? But we got to make the families go on that.
Yeah. Good.
Shelby may correct me later on that because I'll say, okay, I'm ready. Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. So Alan, first of all, this is absolute pleasure to be here hearing this report. And I know that you're concerned about, what happens if different people come, but I think what you're doing is you're changing the culture. The culture really isn't dependent on only the leader and the team members. It becomes part of a living, breathing thing. And I think all the time you're putting it up front right now, it's going to make a difference. And I would just say in terms of the case manager reaching out to those families that you're not hearing from, you're not hearing from them because those families are way too busy and overwhelmed. That's the only reason families don't come back, from lots of experience on this. So I think that reaching out to them is excellent. Encouraging you to do that.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And I think we're gonna talk later, I think Nurse Pam will be talking to you about something we're gonna do that's kind of new. Where we really are able to help families where they are and not just wait till they come to us with problems. So Nurse Pam will talk about that a little.
The other comments?
I'll just say thank you for your interaction with us. You know, a lot of us have had one-on-ones with you. Doing great. Get feedback and information and understanding what you're trying to do.
And now I have a university, the basketball team.
They have one, you know, they're not any good, but they have.
I don't have to worry about the March Madness.
No, not at all.
All right, so I just wanted to get that in there a little bit before we got into the program initiative, so I'll turn that back over to you.
Okay, I was glad you didn't ask questions, so you talk to me every day, so you can ask me. But let's have Shelby, you wanna get in the hot seat?
I'm all right, right?
Shelby, I kind of changed your title to chief of staff because being new, I don't want to miss anything. So I copy on everything because I know that I don't write down anything. Everything just never goes in my mind. I keep, and if it's important, it stays at the top of my mind. But she keeps me on pat, and she's done a great job. I'm really happy to have her there, making sure I don't mess up. But she has a lot of responsibility. So go ahead, Shelby.
So, as Alan mentioned, chief of staff, primarily my day-to-day is supporting Alan and the executive leadership team, creating structure and trying to bring some order to chaos. So one of the projects we're working on is.
Did you just say I was chaos? That's the wrong way.
Just, it's chaos everywhere. I hope that I thrive. Yes, I thrive in chaos. So, but one of the projects that leadership is working on that I'm really excited about, I think the whole team is really excited about, primarily because it's the foundation for how we make decisions in the program. So we're creating a clear framework for how the program moves from an idea to an action or to a decision, or from identifying a problem to implementing a solution. So in the past, decisions were made primarily with very little family input, right? Even when the intent behind those were really good, the approach sometimes led to confusion, frustration amongst our families. So this new framework, families are not, we have families at the center of the process. So we engage them throughout the entire initiative framework. So now families can raise concerns, bring ideas to us. We have the bridge calls, they can reach out to leadership directly. We have the virtual meeting policy for them to speak more openly, to give us those ideas. We have the family advisory committee to help us identify, are these ideas even a priority for families? How is this actually going to affect families? And if it were to be implemented. So this does mean we have families now looking at our draft policies. So before anything is finalized, we make sure that they have an eye on them and give us some feedback. We really value that. So we created another step in this framework, this process, specifically for data analysis, some research. We have a new senior analyst on our team, Sarah Roche, that is going to be her main objective, is to look at the data to understand the scope, evaluate whether the solution would improve outcomes for families, and assess what kind of implementation would require for staff. What logistically is that going to look like? And then near the end of the framework here, we have our implementation. So making sure that staff are prepared, families know what to expect. They can get training for anything that they may need as we roll out a new policy. And also that we have the systems in place to support the change. So after implementation, of course, we want to make sure we are being vigilant about monitoring outcomes, learning from these changes, continually making adjustments as needed. So you can think of this framework that I keep mentioning as a roadmap, like a pipeline. For how ideas move from discussion into action. Okay, so when a new idea or problem is brought up, it goes through the process with some checkpoints along the way. I can't reach the end until we've hit every checkpoint. The decisions that we make in this program affect our families' children, their daily lives. So it's their voices are not just welcome in the process, they're essential to it. And I believe the next board meeting, so in May, you'll have our chief of programs, Kim Usolini, and Sarah Roche will be joining us to kind of walk us through how some of these new processes have been, how this framework has been working in the development of these new processes. So we're really looking forward to that.
So with this process, how are you documenting and keeping track of that and being able to have it, formalized in a way that you can share it? And then also in the future, it's almost like if you don't document it right, understand why you're doing this and what came out of it, you may end up the same place.
Yes, we have actually, in fact, in Alan's office, I have even a board to display kind of where we are in the process with our different procedures. I can't speak too directly to as far as the family advisory committee is. That's Sarah Roche will have more detail as far as like the documentation involved with that. But essentially each step is when an idea comes in, leadership will kind of tier, okay, is this how high of an impact is this? Is this something that we need to take a little more slowly? Or is it something that it could move along a little bit more? So there's rationale behind exactly like the speed and the direction that each of those go.
And that's being documented
Correct.
in writing?
Yes, sir.
In fact, as families give feedback, we collect them and then we get together and talk about the feedback and what we think is right and wrong. Sometimes family members disagree, even internally. Like we sent out a memo the other day, internally we didn't agree, which is good. Now we get the families, but it's all documented. We use, what's it called? The thing where we all type into the same document.
Oh, just SharePoint.
We use SharePoint, so everything
Yeah.
gets to be.
That's good.
We're gonna keep.
Track changes.
Yeah.
Control is much better.
And I'll tell you, my view is once we have something that comes to the end, we're gonna have a white paper with it explaining how we got there, because I think you guys are gonna wanna know, and some of the issues actually are so big, we're gonna wanna bring it to you guys and make a recommendation because they're big. And I think one of the things that I know families care about is a big issue that's out there now we're discussing is, should you get paid more if you're a registered nurse? Or, there's different categories, and that's been talked about a lot. And I think that it's something that we're getting ready to embrace. We're having meetings with it, with families. But remember, there's three places families interact with decision making. One, with ideas, as people call in, they sometimes get in our roadmap. Two, advisory committee of about 14 people or more, or whatever. That's a formal place where they see it. And lastly, we don't make a decision until we send it out to every family to give them an opportunity that weren't part of that committee to at least make a comment on it. So I think it's a great process you guys have come up with.
Yeah, so I think we do. Do you have a visualization of that process flow?
Yes, I do. We will bring that to May. We're finalizing the final product, so to speak. But yeah,
Okay.
I am a big graphic person. In fact, that visual of the roadmap that's actually how I'm.
You would laugh at the debate about how it should look.
Just come to Alan's office, I drew it on his whiteboard.
Yeah.
No, I think that'd be helpful. I mean,
Yes.
it's great for us. I'm a visual person too, but, and I'm kind of saying a little peek of that, but I think they're great for families to see.
Yes.
Right.
We would like them to be involved. Like we're going to be bringing it to the next family advisory committee meeting too. We want their feedback on this process.
Yeah.
I mean, this is another area where they can, have some input.
Good job, Sheldon. The next presentation will be Nurse Tammy Ratliff. And let me say something. I've been to Nancy's, I've been to Tammy's meetings with her staff. And they're just amazing meetings, a lot of collaboration, they work together. It's not like someone's in charge of everyone, but everyone feels like part of the team. And we have some great initiatives going on here that I think will impact the families immediately. And one pilot in particular that I think is necessary. So Tammy, go ahead.
Thank you for welcoming me. I'm nervous. I am a registered nurse. I am the case management supervisor. I was hired into this role to do home visits, and we're hoping to roll out that very soon. And to roll out that, we've seen a need to connect more with our families, and seeing that need and wanting to be proactive and speaking to our families sometimes before they reach out to us. That's right. Your nurse, you want your people that are to anticipate the needs that you have, better about that outcome. So in doing that, we extended offers to 2 individuals that accepted. One started yesterday. Her name is Jillian, and Joe will start at the end of the month. They're both social workers. They are both established in their community. Joe comes from helping people that have had brain injuries as adults and helping them get into society, use the skills they have, build them, find homes, making a new life from the structure that they have. Jillian comes from a background of working in our public schools, working with young people, working in their homes, and helping them as well as life brings challenges and changes to help build. So along with our current team we have, having those 2 additional people, we're only going to get stronger. And getting stronger, we need to assign case specialists to families so that they know who to call. In the past, many people would email people in the program, hoping that they would respond. Was it the right person? Now we want case management to be the center. Kim calls us with bus drivers. So knowing our bus route, knowing what bus to get on. So by the end of this week, we're hoping that all of our families will have communication with our case specialist, assigning a person. Some families, I've already started reaching out to my families, and as she said, families are very busy. Some people like to talk daily. Some people are like every week, I'm good. And some are just calling to me something. I've had an opportunity to do virtual visits with families, to see faces of the children, the young adults. And it is so fun. We love to brag about our kids and to give the families an opportunity for us to eventually come in their homes, to see their children virtually, to hear what they like. One of the families earlier this week, we talk about so many of the challenges that children have within this program, but also that they are just like our kids and have needs. And one of the families was sharing that at day camp, that her son is in his 30s, how he very much likes a female interaction with spiritual man. And I just have to giggle like this can be very serious work. We can hear about the challenges, but it's so neat to hear, like, they like music therapy, they like girls, they like different things, to get to know the individuals in our program, not that as we're used to be thought of, we're like an insurance company. We want to build out as a family. And when a family builds a relationship to start out slow, getting to know them, building that trust with your case specialist, so you have someone to go to, connect you along the way. But when that crisis occurs, that you can call and say, this is what I need, and we can be that voice for you. Through the committees that we've talked about, that we have, the pilots, we're growing and looking at equipment that we know all families need. There's so much paperwork tied up with these families that they already have to keep up with. So as the nurse in this role, looking for DME, looking at supplies that can be like the easy button, that they won't have to have a letter of medical necessity. Resides, who's currently here in the back, she is the claims manager. She will oversee the more technical DMEs, those that are more specific to the participant, where I will look at, and this is going to be evolving with time, feedback is good, but looking to see how we can lessen the burden. The input that we get from the bridge call, I like to, I don't always have to speak, but to be able to see the chat. And when the families are asking questions, to be able to chat with them, to share your email address, and to see them talk amongst each other is amazing. And I don't think we would have had those opportunities without that. I also get the opportunity to be on the Family Advisory Committee. There are some wonderful people on the committee, and those that are not on the committee are wonderful as well. But there are so many people with talents that they bring that will really help us going through the handbook and decision-making processes that are just going to make things better. And I've always found that the parents are the experts. We may be professionals in bringing our skill sets, but it's the parents and the children that teach us what we need. Make sure I covered everything there.
While you're looking, Tammy, just
Yes.
mention the balloon pilot we had is hard work, medically necessary. So like, one day I was in there and they were asking for a person to get a letter from their doctor of medical necessity because they wanted to get a ring. And it was in a wheelchair.
Right.
He said, why are we having to go to their doctor? Why are we waiting 2 months? We have a nurse that well, first of all, any of us could say he's a ring. But I think it's going to streamline that. And I think ways to get rid of the paperwork and bureaucracy that makes sense, especially when it comes to medically necessity. We have their medical records, we know. So I think that was a big issue.
Any questions?
I,
Yes.
and if everything sounds wonderful and thank you for all your efforts and
Yes.
team's efforts. I'm just curious about the workload, because
Yes.
being an RN myself,
Yes,
and
that's a great
listening
question.
to the number of clients you
Mhm.
have. And I understand the social work, but there is, and it was an MSW, but there is, right, a difference between the RN and MSW.
Sure, exactly. So currently we have less than 200, around 200 employments. We looked, I should put some things, correction, participant, family, child. The individual, we've looked at their level, their acuity level from tier 1, 2, and 3. 1 being the lowest. Those families that check on me once a year, I'm great, I'll reach out to you. Where 3, they have acute problems going on. So we tried to classify those families so that each case specialist is not loaded with all 3s.
Yeah.
That they have a mix of 1, 2, and 3s so that the goals are achievable for them. We also are going to make an assessment sheet, session assessment, not a session assessment for each individual to make sure that they are aware of each benefit. So that case specialists, though they might have a different degree of MSW, on the job training or at our end, we're all speaking to the same thing for those families. The caseloads, myself, I have 11 cases. We have one individual that has 20. Her name is Danny. You probably all have spoken to her home before, and she's growing in her role. So she'll have tier 1s. So she can continue with her clerical role as well as building and case management. Charmin will have about 60. She's our most established case manager, and she has helped with a lot of our high acuity cases, and she wants to keep those families. Our new hires will have between 30 and 40 of tier 1, so that they can get awareness of what the expectation is and then grow in the community. Yes.
You already done that stratification of the ones, Susie?
We have.
What, how does the membership break down? What kind of breakdown? Just in terms of total.
I do not know. That would be a very interesting thing to look at. Yes, I can share that. Yes, I have. I don't. If you help me remember it in the minutes.
You have a mechanism to get all that data collecting into system so that everyone has access to it.
Exactly. Yes, for reporting for the case management purpose. So currently we use Asana, which is a system that we need to grow upon. So as we're looking to digitalize everything, and we want to make sure that we, just like the hospital system would, that we are all asking the same things as a case specialist, and that we're all reporting everything. And be ready for audits, right? And making sure that we're asking the right questions, and that if I wanted to look into another case specialist and look at that conversation, that I could get that information just as if I had been there. I could follow up verification, or if there's a concern.
Right. It's not just the staff burnout, it's the family burnout.
That is correct. And I hope that we'll find better use of our time with paperwork, with having a system where nothing is computerized right now. It's easy to use paperwork. It happens, we're all human. So having the families be able to interact with our computer system, hopefully that we end up getting them holding us accountable, that they send us the paperwork electronic. And then also using that system to help us look at preferences of families from education, learning, language. So we don't ask the same questions over and over, and we respect their privacy. They don't want to engage, that they don't. Yes. Okay.
And one other thing, the computer system, whatever we end up with, families are gonna have access to.
Absolutely.
That is a priority. It's their records, they need to have access online.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Thank
Good
you.
job, Amy.
Thank you.
And the last presenter is John Matthews, our records officer. And first of all, I appreciate, John, you agreed to do this. This is a big role for us, especially over the next few months because we have so much. And I'll let you talk about what we do. It's huge.
It is a bit of a beast to bear, and you'll have to forgive the irony of the person undertaking records digitization using a physical cheat sheet.
He's gonna shred that right after.
But first off, good morning. I know that I've had the opportunity to meet you, but thank you for allowing us this time to explain where we're at with the records process. As Alan alluded to earlier, we are looking at the date, November 17th, 1987. At this point, is already burned in my mind. That is the date that the initial assessment and participation agreements were signed by our first initial batch of hospitals, insurance carriers, and doctors. We've already found a little over 100 of them as we've been going through our first round of working to digitize all of our documents. As the process is getting underway, we first were able to establish what we were working with, which was the big thing that we didn't even know what we had. So we now know that we are working with about 1,200 boxes or about 1,600 cubic feet of documents currently in offsite storage. The large majority of this is old AR files pre-2016 that have been left there. Roughly half of them have a destruction marker, no date. And a large part of our work on the offsite is going to be cataloging those that do not have destruction markers and do not have descriptions, series coding them with the proper retention schedule, and then disposing of them as necessary. Those that do not meet or that are still under their retention codes will need to be scanned, and that we will be outsourcing to a separate company for an additional contractor. We have not settled on that contractor. We're still working on procurement for them. We have done the process internally for our on-site storage. The big process or the big focus on our internal documents that we have on site is ensuring that anything specifically from 87 to 89 is reviewed thoroughly, specifically for establishing any historical documentation or historically or institutionally relevant documentation to maintain a permanent archive. Luckily enough, I've already been in touch with our analysts here at the Library of Virginia. They have been an help in this. Up until a month ago, the Virginia Birth Injury Fund was not even recognized by the Library of Virginia. We did not have any form of, we did not have the ability to file RM3 destruction forms, which we now do. We have already filed our first one. We were able to destroy roughly 12 cubic feet of AR documents from 2011 prior. Now, 12 out of the nearly 2,000 total that we've got is a small step, but it is a small step in the right direction. The overall goal here is to get much of the unnecessary retained documents removed, shredded, and disposed of properly, because it is simply an overbearing burden that the organization no longer needs to hold under the Virginia Public Records Act. Every single document that is that old is necessary to provide in terms of more broad requests. And a lot of the times they're not the documents that people are even wanting. They want something more recent generally. And so the fact that we are retaining them outside of the retention schedule creates not only an organizational risk, but it creates an inefficiency. It creates more barriers for those that need the information, be it internal or external stakeholders. With the goal of digitizing all records that we still need to maintain, we are hoping to have this done in about 4 months. It's a fairly tight time frame. It's a fairly large project, but it's something we're putting a great deal of effort into because it is going to go hand in hand with our changes that we are making on the case management team, on the claims team, trying to make sure that information is available at their fingertips. We don't want a situation anymore where case management or claims has to stand up from their desk while they're on the call with family and go, hold on, I will be back in 20 minutes while I try and dig up that file or that policy. It is slowing them down and has been slowing them down for years, decades at this point. And this is a fundamental change we need to make over and beyond, over and above just the requirements that we are now holding to with the Virginia Public Records Act. It's important for the organization to make sure that we can continue to serve families in an efficient and timely manner. Does anybody have any questions about our initial document or our initial push on this? We will be continuing to provide updates for everyone on the board as the project begins to get underway further. Like I said, the next big update will be the procurement of a scanning and shredding company to assist us in the larger bulk of those 1,200 boxes.
Where are those boxes?
They are stored at the VRC in Colonial Heights.
Is it like,
It is an off-site
what
storage.
is it? It's like Iron Mountain type of thing or something, or is it just a storage place?
Yes.
It's like Iron Mountain, okay.
Yeah.
good.
We went and visited there. It was-
Okay.
It was very, it seemed like the movie Raiders of the Lost. I felt like I was in that movie.
Okay,
We had to pull a file away just so we could look at it.
okay.
It took a while to find it.
They from most of our meeting, we were able to drop the process.
Yeah.
Didn't find what you're looking for, okay. That's
And we'll save money on those storage fees.
Yeah.
We get some cost savings.
So they have 1,200 boxes for how long? Stored somewhere?
We have, this is actually the third company to own the document storage organization we use because they've been in there so long. It's why many of roughly half don't have destruction tags, is because obviously during organizational changes, they have not been able to maintain all information. Now that said, largely the documents tend older, not newer, because we over time realized that if you are never going back to reopen these documents, you need to take a more keen eye to what do you need to be holding on to? What are you compelled to hold on to under the RA, under the retention set by the Library of Virginia? Because maintaining everything does not help.
Did we look to see if there's any other retention policy for the workers' compensation or anything like that that might sort of supersede?
There is relevant retention codes for all state agencies. We do not, as being fairly new, we've been in the system for a month. They have not developed any specific codes, and we will work with them on any documentation that we have internally that does not properly fit under the section retention codes. Broadly, the general series codes cover most of what we're going to work with. As I said, the large majority of this is actually AR, which falls under 100,082, and our AP, which is 100,081. So largely, we shouldn't need to use any of the Workman's Comp Commission's codes because those are developed by the Workman's Comp Commission specifically for them. But we will likely need to at some point, once we get down into the real technical side of our documentation, we'll likely need at least one or two specific series codes for us, but we'll work through the standard policy for the Library of Virginia is to work with your analyst directly on making sure we have the proper retention schedule for those documents.
Interesting, because that is kind of talking about, but save documents older than 2 years. For scanning those in right now.
Exactly. That's why the first portion of this project is mostly going back and disposing of unnecessary routine documents. We have also continued to work with The biggest risk here is specifically with us being a high FOIA organization. Anytime there is a FOIA request, even if that record is outside of retention, we are required to retain it until the FOIA request is fulfilled. We were actually recently working on some agreements when we have FOIA requests come in. We are working on that now, and we will continue with the proper disposal and the retention codes after that has been completed.
And we have an expert from Harper, Virginia, that he works with. It's Allison. Emily, maybe you can say her letter here.
Yeah, I'm glad to. I have any questions to touch on all.
But it's been great. They got training videos on everything. They aligned us perfectly with the right codes and everything. And, you know, it's not an accident. John was chosen, very talented, so appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
John, to understand this is a 4-month digitization, over 4 months, that seems kind of a narrow window.
It is a fairly narrow window. It is getting very specific attention, and that is also why we are looking at an external contractor to assist us specifically with the shredding and the scanning. The big thing that we are taking internally, myself and also Ms. Rhonda are taking internally, is a lot of the series coding, so that when we hand them a box, we have a retention and destruction date. If the destruction date is after today or before today, they can shred it. If the destruction date is after today, you can scan it. So once we have that handled internally, a large chunk of this will go external. And admittedly, to your point, the 4 months is a tight time frame, but it's also in large part looking at the fact that we will be hopefully going to, or we are working currently towards a more digital system for everything, especially for our case management team, maintaining claims internally, as well as AP and AR. The true answer is that we got to get it done, because if we're putting the new digital files in, still trying to reference old digital files, one way or the other, they're going to need to get in the system. So putting that as a higher priority is really where we're currently sitting. We have dedicated whole days out of the schedules to make sure that this project continues to stay on track and the momentum maintains.
And when we get FOIA requests, the fact that it's scanned, we can find it. If it's just paper places, we're not going to find it. Just there's too many places. It costs money every time you go up and say we want to file this. All of a sudden, it takes some time to get it, and it may not even be in the box. And this is going to, when you scan it, given all the technology it's been moving forward, we can find it if we scan by the keywords.
There are a few others that tie into this, but they're more long-term plans to ask earlier. One of the concerns in the healthcare, insurance, and benefit space is specifically using AI to assist with many of the more organizational tasks due to the fact that we do use we have PHI and PII included. Part of this records will assist us in possibly looking towards procurement on a secure and HIPAA compliant AI interrupt system that is poured on all and sets up the barricades such that they can use it internally to organize, draft, tell it to, hey, I need the files for 2022 and 2025 for Mrs. Jenkins or John Doe. That is a lot.
So no chat GPT.
No chat GPT. We are not large enough for enterprise. Yeah.
There you go.
But any other questions regarding the ongoing records digitization?
I do have a question.
Absolutely.
It maybe not necessarily answer tone or not. How much time is being expended breaking down? I don't know how many FOIA requests are out. Or how much time is being expended just FOIA requests, taking away the task?
Currently, we receive between 2 and 5 a month. That many of them are fairly simple requests that require a short period of time, 1 to 2 hours at most. It really comes down to what the size of the FOIA and what the scope of the FOIA requests are. A request for participating agreements or something along those lines could take quite a long time, just because because of the fact that we retained them since 1987. If there's no specificity and the request requester projects to narrow the request, they would theoretically request, as much as they want on that side, and at least a requirement, not a nicety, FOIA, as I'm sure everybody here knows. And so as a result, if there is that broad, while we can provide a quote for the pricing for them, it really just comes down to what requests coming in are. It's some months max of 10 hours and 15 hours of work going into it. Some months it could be as high as 40 entire work.
What a FOIA request comes in, who's tasked?
Up till current, it has been Charlotte Spence, our agency head. I have taken on the full forward with the records retention because I'll be touching every documentation. It will make it quite a bit easier on the FOIA side to know where everything is cataloged, where everything is scored.
Okay. I'm just trying to get an idea of whose time is taking.
As we transition from paper to digital, it will be moving more and more from Spence to myself.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
So very much.
Mr. Chair, again, I want to thank the board for the support I've had this last month and a half. It's been great. I feel like I'm heading in the right direction based on my individual comments with you throughout the time since I've started talking to you. But most importantly, I want to thank the families for engaging with the program and staff and me directly. Most of them have my cell phone. It's at the bottom of every one of my emails. I generally enjoy speaking with them. It inspires me. It gets me excited to try to find solutions and listen to their story. And really, it's about letting parents, trying to support parents and having their children improve their quality of life and live up to their potential. So thank you.
I think I speak on behalf of the board with this. We're jumping in and really accomplishing on middle period of time, and the staff as well. And I speak quite often, so I get to hear a lot of the updates kind of on the fly stuff or potential. So we appreciate that. Appreciate the staff. Really, just last one I have just working for everything. So, and the excitement here from the office, it's great. All right, next item on the agenda, we do have a public comment section. I know we have joining us personally. I don't know that we have that signed up for public comment. We do have live here, but
Mr. Chairman, my apologies. One of the votes. I know the board already voted on this transparency policy, but in reviewing it, I see one recommended change, and it would be under the public comment section on the second page where it says when the public comment is offered, speakers may be required to register in advance. So guidance from the Virginia FOIA Advisory Council says that not require registration in advance, you can request. So I would recommend to the board to just vote again on this and change required to requested or asked.
I have another comment. Clearly, if they come, there won't be a problem with registering or anything. The reason we put that requirement is in Florida, we've had hackers with pornography on websites and stuff. And so Florida has made that change just because if you let anyone in, you get some bad actors. And that was the purpose of that.
Actually, looking at the registration list, there was a bad address in there. It was very obvious that it was made up, and upon doing some more research, it was likely a hack. So
There's been statewide calls that the chairs of committees have had that had pornography come into the committee and they couldn't get it off. It was horrible.
Yeah, I'm sure there are policy concerns, but unfortunately, that's what our advisory council said. I don't think that means that you have to put somebody on the screen without, them announcing who they are ahead of time, but you can't require them to register before the meeting. If that makes sense.
I think during legislative sessions, like in the Senate and House, you register while it's in session.
Exactly. Yeah. So in other words, I guess the operative word is, and that's actually helpful. before the meeting.
Yeah.
So what this says is in advance, so that's why it's.
Okay.
So I think it would just be if you change requested to register in advance. I think you're good to
Can we
go.
treat that as a technical change? We'll do it, send the policy.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to take a quick look at it either, so I mean, so anybody move to make the appropriate changes to a rich.
So moved.
Right, so we have a motion by /%. All right, all those in favor of that?
Aye.
Nay. The resolution is to make that change appropriate. To adjust the required language is. Okay. Change and then we'll adopt it. I appreciate it.
It's nuts.
Right, so at this point in time, I'll move to the event public comment. Who's running the.
One, individual that's registered and indicating they would like to speak is not on the call.
Yeah.
But I will, and I think there's that, they can raise their hand if there is anyone virtually that would like to speak.
Well, while we're doing that, the first here's, absolutely.
Lawrence Wilson, parent of Hannah Goldsmith, participant in the program. I just wanted to say that we find at this meeting are significantly different than we have been at all the other meetings that I've been to, and so I want to thank you. I want to, because everybody knows this is something I've been a stickler on, I want to thank you for mentioning that you hired a part-time procurement officer and that you were actually going to be preparing properly. And that, again, I've mentioned this, but for the audit committee, there are many parents and family members in this group who will be qualified to serve on the audit committee, one of my husband and others. And that the laws do not preclude a non-board member from participating in the audit committee, because I think we only had 2 members, and it was a concern that those 2 members were also on the investment committee, and that they would be tasked with everything money all the time. And that as the fund goes through and becomes more transparent, I'm going to submit all the FOIA requests. And it has become more transparent. I promise to submit fewer. And then once these become more, I have to stop and start participating.
You don't want.
Thank you.
All right. All right, do we have anybody there? All right. Not, then that'll finalize our public comment agenda. At this point in time, we will go into session. So I move to the board of directors, Virginia Berkeley, Neurologic and compensation. I'm going to close meeting for the following reasons. 1, discussion consideration for interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, salary, discipline, termination, resignation, specific employees, subject in which is 1, the chief financial officer position, 2, duties of the former program employees and resulting of action pursuant to the personal exemption, VA code 2.23711 A1, there's a 2 to consult with legal counsel pertaining to actual problem. Such a consultation would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, the subject of which are pending claims and pending cases against and in favor of the Virginia Birth-Related Neurological Injury Compensation Fund pursuant to the legal counsel consultation exemption, Virginia Code 2.23711 A7. And number 3, the consultation with legal counsel employed retained by public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provisions, legal advice by such counsel, subject to which are pending claims, pending cases against, and in favor of Virginia Birth-Related Neurological Injury Compensation Fund pursuant to the legal counsel consultation exemption of Virginia Code 2.23711 8. There's a second. Second, Mark Cable. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. All right, ayes have it. Therefore, to go into closed session.
Yeah. Hey.
Take a 10-minute break, please.
Thank you.
Yeah.